So a new project I'd like to spend some time on is fixing and improving the pickguard on my bass. So this here is my bass. It is a Squire by Fender P-Bass, and I've had it for about 10 years. It's quite old. I got it when it was brand new. I don't really consider myself a bass player, but when I record stuff, it's always nice to add, a little bass to it as well. So I'm no expert at playing this, and this is a very low-end bass, but it really, just having that, me playing this on my recordings really seems to add a lot of low end to it and really make for a much better final product, in my opinion. So anyways, there's an issue I've been having with this bass. There's an issue I've had with it for many years, and that's with the pickguard on it. Whatever kind of pickguard they happen to use on it, it's made out of a really low grade type of plastic, and you can see even right here it's starting to kind of crack away. There's a split there, and it's kind of discolored there, and it's just a whole bunch of little cracks that are in that stuff there, and I really don't care about that. That's really just cosmetic up there. It's just there for decoration. The pickguard doesn't really do a whole lot. But what I'm having the issue with is down here where the jack from the amp plugs into it. What happened was, so usually there's a piece missing here, but usually this edge here came all the way out to here and then rounded around and connected up with that, and then there's a hole drilled in it, and that's where this jack is supposed to go, and then it goes through the pickguard there. But what happens of course is when you have your patch cord plugged into there, if there's anything that causes this end here to get pulled on, it just really easily makes a little split in this material, and then it's ruined, right? So what happened to this, probably maybe after about 2 years of having it, there was a nice little crack that just ran straight through the middle of here, because of course it got split there, and then of course this thing's all flopping around, and it's losing its conductivity when you're trying to play and record stuff with it. So my temporary fix was just to tape those two pieces back together using electrical tape, which has lasted for a while, but it's never been the way it should be. It's always been kind of a loose connection that's not very reliable. So of course the most obvious, the most easiest way of fixing the pickguard is just to replace the whole thing. They'll sell you, if you go to a music store, you can order, or sometimes they even have them in stock. You can just order a whole new pickguard that'll fit right on here. All the holes and everything will line up, and you just put it on again. But I figure that that pickguard is probably going to be just the same as this one here. It's not going to last for very long either. It's probably a similar material, and particularly in this area here again, probably the same thing's going to happen. I'm going to bump that patch cord with my knee sometime, or it's going to bump into something, or who knows what will happen, but it's going to split it there again. So what I've been thinking of doing is replacing that section of pickguard, so keeping all of the pickguard up there, which is still, it still works. It's cosmetically damaged there, but I don't really care about that. What I'm thinking of doing is just taking a saw and just cutting this right here, and then replacing the remainder of it with a piece of sheet metal instead, and then mounting like the volume knob and the tone knob, as well as the jack for the patch cord, all onto that piece of sheet metal. And of course, maybe spending some time in shaping it so it looks just the same as the original here, so it fits nicely. But the whole idea is to put a whole lot more structure in this area here, so that it's not going to split, because the metal is probably not going to split from it getting pulled on. So basically the end result of that idea is I'm going to have a pickguard which is partially metallic and partially the original plastic material that was there all along. So I do already have a few pieces of sheet metal that I have left over from other projects. So what the idea is, as I was saying, was take something like this, and then just basically I'm putting it over the top of that like that, and cutting it to shape and putting it basically in place of what's underneath there, and hopefully it's going to work a whole lot better than what was there. Although I do have one concern, in that if I put this here and I have it grounded with the rest of things, is it going to pick up a whole lot of interference from from things in the room. So I think the first step I'm going to do here is I'm going to try mounting, just the jack, drilling a hole in one of these pieces of sheet metal and mounting that inside of there, and then plugging it in and seeing if I'm getting any interference from the presence of having that big, metallic mass that's attached to the system. So that's the first thing I'm going to try out. So I decided, rather than cutting into one of these nice big good sheets of sheet metal that I might want to use there, I decided I'd use my test piece, just this little scrap of material that I just found laying around. I drilled this hole in it, which is the right size, which will fit onto there like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just do a little sound check. I have my bass amp over there turned on, and I'm just going to plug it in just as it is, just straight plug into there, and then I'm going to bolt this thing on and plug it in and see if there's any additional interference from having this part as part of the circuit for the amp there. So okay, so there I got it plugged in directly. The volume's turned down right now, but I'm just going to turn it up now, all the way up. And as you can hear, there's hardly any interference. We'll just stop talking for a moment so we can hear that. There's a little bit of interference, but that amp it always does that. Gets a little bit of interference just from the patch cord itself. But yeah, I'll just play one of the strings, and it comes through very clearly with no interference. So now I'm going to put this guy on, I'll bolt it on, and then we'll see if it makes any difference. Okay, so now I got it bolted to this piece of metal here. All you do is there's just a nut on the outside and a washer, and you screw it on. And now I'm going to plug my patch cord in and see if there's any additional interference this big metal plate is picking up that it wasn't picking up without it there. Okay, so now it's plugged in, and we'll just turn the volume back up, and it really sounds just the same as before. Really no interference. I'll just play a note. Comes through very clearly. Just cut it off. Now I'll try putting my hand on top of here. Not really any. Heard a little noise there, but I think that was just the connection. Very good. Well, that's when my hand shorts the, or just if I touch the metal piece, I guess. Okay, so it seems that your patch cord's got two polarities. There's this inside, which you can touch as much as you want, and it doesn't really pick anything up. But the end part is really what gets all of the interference from. So I think with the way that this jack works, that the outside part is what touches the metal piece here. It's really not going to cause any interference if I put a piece of metal here instead of a piece of plastic. So I think I'll go ahead and I will take this sheet here, and I will draw on it and trace out something that will basically be the shape of everything on this side of that imaginary line that was drawn all the way out to this part here. So I wanted to get an idea of what sort of shape I needed for my piece of metal that I'm going to cut. It's going to go there and replace it. So what I did was I created this template out of paper. So I cut it just to the shapes of the existing piece of plastic that's under there, and of course I've extended it out here to fill the part that's missing of the existing pickguard. So what the idea is this plastic original pickguard is going to be cut straight line right there, and then next to it there's going to be the metal part here, which spans all the way from there down to here. So this piece here I'm going to take off, and then I'm going to put it on top of one of my pieces of sheet metal here. Then I'm going to trace that pattern onto there, and then I'm going to cut it out in that shape, and then of course drill all the holes for all the screws that go in there. There will be a total of, I guess, 4 screws. This one here as well as those other 3 there. They're going to hold this piece of metal in place, and I think that should work pretty well. I've also this part here I made a little bit longer than I think what the existing was, so it'll get a little bit stronger, a little bit thicker, and less likely to break like the existing one did, even though this new one's going to be made out of metal. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to trace this design onto here. and I'm going to try and cut it as best I can to that shape so we can go ahead with that replacement. So it's a few hours later now. I took my paper template and I taped it onto the piece of steel and I cut around it, and spent quite a bit of time with my hacksaw and with a file just going around and getting it, so it looks somewhat professional, so it's, nice and smooth around the edges, so you're not going to cut yourself on it or anything. And after I did that, I took the bass completely apart and I took the pickguard off, and then I put this part here over top of the part that's going to replace it, and I used my Sharpie and I just marked all the holes on there because I'm going to want to make sure that I can get all the same holes so that it's going to line up with the original screw holes that it had. And also you're going to want to make sure that your two knobs are approximately in the same place. I don't have any reference for where this goes, but it really doesn't matter. I'm just going to put it in whatever part I think is going to be structural enough. So my next step here is I'm going to drill some of these holes and start to get it fitted in there. And hopefully tonight I'll be able to mount this right on the bass. I'm not going to bother cutting this part yet. I'm just going to put it, just like that kind of thing, and then we'll give it a try and see how it works. So I've got the 3 screw holes that I put on drilled, and you can see that they all line up really nicely with the original holes. But I still have one more screw hole back here, which is left to drill, but unfortunately that's the one that's difficult because it's missing from my template over here from the existing one. So the trick I'm going to use to find that 4th hole, which is somewhere over here, is I'm going to make another template out of a piece of paper this time. I'm just going to lift this out of my way, and what I'm going to use this center punch tool here, and I'm just going to make an impression in each one of the holes. So it's probably good to just make a hole to get started. So I'm just going to make a hole there like that, and then I just line that up with one of them. So this one right here, just like that. And to make sure that it doesn't move, I'm going to take one of the original screws that I had and just stick it in there just to keep it from moving. You don't have to tighten it up or anything. So the second one is kind of diagonally across somewhere over here. You can look underneath the peak kind of approximately where it is. So it's somewhere in that general area right there. Okay, and I'll just put another screw in there, just keep it in place. And the next one is kind of over here somewhere, so we'll just feel around for it a little bit. Not too worried about scratching the paint on this bass. It's actually over here, right there. And that's pretty good. I'll just grab another screw and plop it in that hole. And now the last one, the one that we actually really care about, which is right around here. And there we go, there's all of those. So I just pushed those screws so they went all the way through now. And then I'm just going to line those up with the holes in the metal I've got. So like that, like that, like that. And I'm just going to grab my marker and I'm just going to make a little mark right there. And there we go. Just got to center punch that hole and then drill it out, and hopefully it should be right in the exact right spot that I want it. So now I've got my 4th screw hole drilled there, and it lines up just as perfectly as all of the other ones do. So probably just going to throw some screws in there and just make sure that it fits as well as it does, but just by looking at it, but I'm pretty sure it will. So I've got all the holes drilled now, and I've got the 2 the volume and the tone knobs. I got them already bolted in. I just have to do the same with the jack where the patch cord goes, and I don't know if I'll really throw in any of these screws yet for holding that in there just yet, because I don't because it's basically you got holes that are wood, and you keep screwing screws in and out and in and out. You're gonna make those holes too big, and then when you're finally done, they're not gonna hold your screws. So I think I'm just gonna the way these things work is there's just a washer that goes on top like that, and then a little nut which just goes on with the regular socket set. And so I'm just going to put that together. So it's all together, and I took it upstairs and got it plugged into the bass amp, and works just the way it's supposed to work. So really all I got to do now is just, I'm going to take it all apart again, and I'm going to paint this because it's just steel. It's not like stainless steel or anything. You can already see that there's some rust forming on it, so I'm going to pick a color to paint it, and then after I've done that, I'm also going to cut that big piece of plastic that used to be the pickguard. So I'm going to cut a line that, you know, corresponds with right here, and it's going to be you know, a redesigned bass, and I'm certain that this thing here is going to be, you know, really strong, and if anything it's going to wreck the patch cord, which is, you know, really inexpensive and easy to replace, as opposed to wrecking the pickguard, or the replacement pickguard that I made out of steel here. So yeah, I'll just I'm going to end it for today because it's you know, pretty late now. It's almost midnight, but when I come back, I'll be working on just painting that. I'll probably use trim clad or something, and really not too much left to do.